On the minute.
I don't think they're watching.
No, I watch the live. You put the live on, I watch the live. I stand up. So if they don't listen to me stand up, then you beat them. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to cut them at a minute. I like to let them finish the point that they're finished, and then I stop and stand up. And still don't listen. I watch that. That's how I know this.
Good evening. Welcome to the Meet the Candidates Forum and our thanks to Club Lake Cathie. I'm Greg Franks, President of the Hastings Residents Association. We're running this forum tonight. It's being broadcast live on YouTube and can also be viewed later on YouTube under the name Meet the Candidates at Lake Cathie. Now, if you've got a number to ask a question, come down the front when it's your turn to ask it, please, and try and keep the question to less than a minute so that we can get through as many questions as possible. Now, as some of you may have heard last week, 4 additional candidates nominated for this election. They're from 4 minor parties that are running. And because we don't have the time to get through 8 candidates, each answering the same question without limiting the number of questions, we've put on a second forum next Tuesday night at the same time, also here at Club Lake Cathie, for those 4 additional candidates to come, and by all means come along and ask them questions as well. Now, our moderator tonight is GP Dr. Mert Ahmed, and he'll explain the rules to you and introduce the candidates.
Hi, my name is Mert. Thank you for attending today. It's a really great turnout. I'd just like to start by just introducing the candidates. Not that they need an introduction, but we've got the State MP Leslie Williams for the Liberals. We've got Mayor Peter Pinson for the Nationals. We've got Keith McMullen for Labour, and we've got Stuart Watson for the Greens. So thank you for attending today. Now, I'll just briefly explain the rules for tonight. We'll start with just a 3-minute introduction from each candidate, where they'll just introduce themselves and outline their policies if they like. And then we'll get straight into taking questions from the floor. We do have the system now where we have the questions, we have the numbers and the questions here, so we'll call out the relevant questions and call the people to ask them. And then the candidates will each have 1 minute to answer each question, and we would appreciate it if we can try and keep that close to a minute, just so we can get through as many questions as we can tonight, because we do have quite a few questions. And then once we've finished, we'll have a 2-minute just a 2-minute speech from each candidate, just to kind of round things up for the evening, and then we'll finish it there. So I'd just like to start by just inviting the speakers' opening remarks. We have kind of randomized the order of questions and everything today, and would like to say that when with the questions, it's really important that when we do ask the questions, that they're not for specific candidates, just for them. These are questions for everyone, and we do like to keep it that way. So I'm just going to start by inviting Peter Pinson.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for this forum. And this is probably the largest group of people in the 3rd forum that we've seen, which means that down in the Lake Cathie, in the southern region of Port Macquarie, you're all very interested in what happens politically down here. Now, I've been saying at each of the forums, all politics is local, and the political is personal. And what does that mean? It means that you as people are embedded in the decisions that politicians make on your behalf. Now, what I would like to say is, for me, as your mayor, I have a great understanding of the local issues. Now, I have been criticised recently of running a local campaign. Well, if all politics is local, of course the local issues matter to you. And as your mayor, I every day work on your behalf on local issues. And as an elected MP, that wouldn't change, because all politics is local, no matter what level you sit at, local, state or federal, they all interlock with one another on the things that matter to you most. Now, I have been travelling through an electorate that in some areas I'm not known in. I spent much of today with the Regional Health Minister, Bronnie Taylor, in Harrington. And the things that matter to the people in Harrington are local issues. The things that matter to you here in Lake Cathie are local issues. The things that matter to the people in Port Macquarie are local issues. We all agree that we're worried about the broader cost of living. We're worried about the broader cost of housing affordability. We're worried about the broader issues as far as employment is concerned. They are broader issues at a state level, but affect us as local issues. One of the biggest local issues in this area that I have been fighting on your behalf for 6 years is that beautiful lake out there that we all love. But for 6 years, for some reason, that local issue hasn't been able to be solved at a local government issue or at a state issue. I promise you that as your member for the Port Macquarie electorate, your issues will matter to me. Those issues will be taken to Macquarie Street, into Parliament House, and they will be fought for at a local level. I've spent the last week with the Deputy Premier of New South Wales talking about local issues. I spent the weekend with the Minister for Education talking about local issues with teachers. And today I spent the day with the Regional Health Minister speaking on local issues. Allow me to be your voice at a local level in State Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jumping the gun there, Stuart. First of all, welcome everybody. It's great to see such a good turnout here tonight. As this is the last Meet the Candidates forum for us here, I do want to really say thank you to Greg and all of the team from the Hastings Residents Association, because you've done an amazing job, and it takes quite a bit of work to get these events organised, but it's really important because it gives all of you an opportunity to hear from the local candidates and make an informed decision about what you're going to do come March the 25th on Saturday week. I do want to also acknowledge my friend and colleague here, the Minister for Metropolitan Roads and Women's Safety. Great to have you here. Thank you for your support, Natalie. And I just want to really say, you know, I moved to Lake Cathie in 1996 with my late husband, Don. We were not here in this community. Most people in this room will know we moved here from South Australia to purchase the local post office business. I had not been in this community 24 hours, and I knew straight away that this was the place where I wanted to run my business and to raise a family, because I could see immediately, and obviously being the local postmistress, I got to meet a lot of people very, very quickly. But I could see and hear from this community that they really knew what they wanted for their community. They also knew what they didn't want. And that has been reflected in many of their community plans. I joined the Local Progress Association only a matter of weeks after I came here. I held a number of positions, and for 5 years was the president of the Local Progress Association, and worked with a number of associations around the local area. And we did some great things, and we achieved some great results through a combined effort. But as I said, what is reflected in the plans that have come before, the Lake Cathie Master Plan in 2000 that had incredible input from this local community, was that this community knew what it wanted. It didn't want to be a big community. It wanted to retain the village atmosphere. But those same views, some 20 years later, are also reflected in the most recent Lake Cathie Community Plan. So I commend everybody who had an input into that plan, and I think it really speaks volumes about who we are as a community and what we want both now and into the future.
Thanks, Leslie, and thanks very much for everyone coming along tonight. And as the last Meet the Candidates forum, I'd like to thank Greg and Mert and the Hastings Residents Association. and all the candidates. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we're standing tonight on Biripi country, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any First Nations people present here tonight. But, for those that don't know me, I've lived in the Hastings Valley for 40 years. I love the Hastings Valley. I believe we've got a unique and precious environment which deserves protection. For decades, the Greens have been the moving force for action on policies that matter for our future. And thanks for giving me a lesson in acting locally, Peter. I think we should think globally and act locally. There's a lot that we can do to save this precious environment, particularly in Lake Cathie. The Greens have got policies and they've called framework principles to save our coast. And these policies are written strictly to stop overdevelopment in the coastal strip from Sydney right through to the Brisbane border. And I urge everyone to have a good look at this. We've got the policies. You know, something that this process of standing for the state seat has really enforced my feeling that the Greens are the best suited to support the environment for the future. I'm really solidified in my gratitude for the great people that we've got in the Greens to support us going forward, particularly with health. We talked before about health, and that is the top topic that I get asked about. We've had Amanda Conn up here. We've spoken to the doctors, the nurses. We've spoken to them personally. We've gone and spoken to the teachers. We've spoken to the police. We've spoken to education providers, and we have a crisis happening. I'm here ready to work on the crisis in education, health and housing. And it's okay to vote Green. Your vote's powerful, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Stuart. Hi, my name is Keith McMullen. I was born and raised in Port Macquarie, Biripi country, which I acknowledge, and I also pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. Thank you. I think we owe them quite a lot of gratitude and debt. I also want to echo all the thanks that have been given here tonight to the organisers, the fellow candidates who've come here to put forward their policies, their vision, their heart to serve our community. I'd like to thank Leslie that she has brought so many grants into our town and our southern regions. But as I was thinking about that, I thought, you know, government is more than just bringing in grants. It's about the outworking of policies locally. How does the state government's policies on housing, business, education, nursing, health, regional development, roads, how is that worked out locally in our town and our southern region? And when we look around today, we're seeing crises right across the state and also in Port Macquarie, in our schools, in our hospitals, with our roads, and with, in some individual cases, the application and the outworking of local management of our beautiful town and region. Labor is concerned about that. Labor has quite a lot of policies, which I'm very happy for you to come and have a photograph or QR code that will take you to them later on that are on the internet. But we have policies about health, education, housing, manufacturing, gambling reform, small business, koalas, wildlife, and the correct sustainable management of our local growth and development, which I think is very crucial. A local Labor member will work hard to have a close and an open relationship with all levels of government, federal, local and state government. If it's my privilege to be your representative, that is one thing that I will be doing, working hard to ensure that our town and our region progresses as best as it can. Thank you.
Oh, we only got one more.
Yeah, we're doing one more.
Hold on.
Okay, who had question one? Is that Mark? Thanks.
Hi guys, it's great to see you all here answering our questions tonight. So my name's Mark Brennan. I'm actually a nurse at Port Macquarie Base Hospital. This is personal. I may get emotional, and I'm really sorry. I'm in radiology. The radiology department at Port Macquarie Base Hospital. They're private. They've been privatised. It took 8 days for a biopsy of my dad. Unacceptable. 8 days, he was in agony. It took another 8 days to get the biopsy report back. He had cancer. They could not treat him because it was too late. The only way I got that biopsy was by calling the director of nursing of this area in Coffs Harbour, and she made it happen within half an hour. So 16 days after my dad had cancer, there was no treatment. He could not be treated. This is a failure of this state government and Bonnie Tyler privatising your hospital out. It's your hospital. You need to vote, and vote very, very carefully. The Liberal National Government are privatising everything. My dad died.
Mark,
My mum is an absolute mess.
Mark.
My question to these members here is, how much more do we have to continue privatising our public health system to people who are making millions of dollars and putting the people in Port Macquarie at risk? It's not on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and my condolences. I was talking before of our emphasis on health. Just this last week, we've had Dr. Amanda Conn, who is our health spokesperson, who actually is on the upper house ticket. We stand to have 5 women in the upper house in New South Wales, and it's very, very likely that we will have the balance of power in both the upper house and the lower house. So your vote for Greens is going to be very powerful. We've met with Mark and the nurses and midwives, and we realise that the hospital in Port Macquarie is in crisis. We've got a plan to open public primary care services, retain and recruit skilled health workers, and get proper staff to patient ratios. How would this help Mark in his situation? It would help him in that it would alleviate the cost burden and the staffing burden on the hospital so that we don't need to privatise services. At the moment, the hospital is using private nursing services, which cost more than giving a pay rise and attracting nurses back to the industry. We really are in a crisis in health, and the Greens have got solutions and policies to suit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you. I don't know where Mark went. Thank you, Mark, for your question. And obviously, I've met with your association on many occasions to hear your concerns, and I think we both acknowledge that we won't always agree on everything when it comes to the association, particularly in relation to nurse-to-patient ratios, because, as you will know, we have a different system of ratios in New South Wales, nursing hours to patient day. But in terms of your question in relation to privatisation, as you would also well know, Mark, there are many aspects of the hospital that have been privatised well before actually the Liberals and Nationals got into government. And that's because sometimes a private organisation can deliver a service better. And I'm not sure that we could say equate privatisation of public and I guess suggest that that is the reason why something was delayed. I don't know your particular circumstances in relation to the details, and hopefully you took action as you can as a resident and a consumer through the health system to get some answers. I hope you've done that, but there is not a health facility across regional New South Wales that has not been upgraded or replaced by the Liberals and Nationals government.
Thanks, Mark. And I do know your personal circumstance, and thank you for sharing it with me. And this is a classic example of where the personal becomes political. When you have a personal experience, a lived experience that affects you greatly, That is where the personal becomes political. I can't answer that because I haven't been your MP. I haven't had the opportunity to go in and fight for these type of issues that you're raising now. Is it acceptable? Certainly not with our loved ones. Do I have the answers as a candidate? Mark, you know I don't. But what I do have is I have a fighting spirit and I have the ear of a government, if re-elected, and regional ministers, regardless of what you think about the current regional minister for health, take the personal out of it, and let's get to the politics of what this community deserves. And the community is growing and the hospital is not keeping pace. I understand that, and I am prepared to go into battle and take stories like yours to ministers and be a loud voice for you. It's not going to help you and your dad, but that's my pledge to you. Thank you.
I mentioned in my introduction that we are in crisis in a number of essential services across our state. And here is a classic example. Your question relates to privatisation. If you have a look at a lot of our essential services where our teachers, our nurses, our ambulance, our police, many of them are striking. They're very upset. Follow the paperwork, follow the money. You'll find a lot of them are privatised or semi-privatised, and they're just simply not delivering the services, the outcomes that we hope that they would. So as far as Labor is concerned, as soon as this trend of privatising essential government services stops, the better. It's not that easy to just turn a flick a switch that it can stop, but the whole process of continuing to sell off government assets, government services, and giving it to privatisation, which are not delivering, and in some cases making quite a few individuals a little bit richer than they should be at the expense of the service that they should be providing. So I'd like to see wherever privatisation is working in with public health, that it is stopped.
Beverly, I believe you have question 2. Can you come down here? I'll bring it up to you.
Yeah, my question's similar, but I asked this at the last meeting and I believe 2 of the candidates didn't really understand the question. So I'll put it another way.
Hold your microphone up, please.
Right. The selling off of public assets that has happened by the present Liberal National Government to fund government black holes allows private companies and agencies to charge high fees and services to make large profits. Sydney Water, Essential Energy are the next in line. So my question is, will you allow this to continue if you are elected or re-elected? And do you agree with the privatisation?
I pretty much have answered that with what my last answer was, but I will say that another example of this privatising trend is with housing. We all know that we have a dreadful housing crisis here in our area, also right across the eastern seaboard of Australia, New South Wales. Let me remind you that the Liberal National Party government has sold off $3 billion worth of public housing, which I'm sure has contributed to this homeless problem that we've got. That has to stop. So as far as I'm concerned, I've made my answer quite clear, and it's something that I'll be working hard in conjunction with the possible new Labor government to see that that trend does stop.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. So in relation to privatisation, as said before, there are reasons we have privatised a whole range of different aspects. Essential energy is not up for privatisation. I'm not sure where you got that idea from. And in fact, as a regional MP, I made my view very clear in relation to that matter many, many years ago, and it was taken off the table because we understand that in regional New South Wales, where, you know, most of the area is actually serviced by essential energy, we understand why it's important. And also, these people in essential energy, nearly 1,000 employees in Port Macquarie, live in our community. So we understood that, and that's why as a regional MP, I fought very hard against it, and we achieved that outcome. I hope that answers your question in relation to that particular one. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Minister, who would know what that's about. Apparently that's been ruled out as well. Thank you.
Thanks, I couldn't recognise my name there. I worked for Essential Energy for 25 years, and I was really closely involved in the privatisation of Energy Australia and the other utilities. And what we saw in those privatisations were the privatisation of the profit and socialising of the cost. And Leslie, the reason that they didn't sell Essential Energy at the time was that you couldn't give it away. Standards and Poor's rated Essential Energy at a B triple minus. They sold the poles and wires companies that had 95% of the population and 5% of the area. Essential Energy has got 95% of the area and 5% of the populations. I'm completely an advocate for it remaining in public ownership and for enhancing our regional communities. They've got a great opportunity now with renewables because we have all the area. We've seen other privatisations of Centrelink, of child services, of the Department of Housing that have been an absolute disaster, where we're seeing companies.
Centrelink rubbish.
Centrelink was providing more employment than the private employment agencies now. So the Greens are opposed to privatisation, and particularly we would start a renewable energy retailer to get renewable energy profits back to the community. Thank you.
Hello, Minister Natalie Ward. I haven't met you yet, but I'm sure I'll get the opportunity after this finishes tonight. There you have it. The Minister of the Coalition and the current member has said no. I've joined the National Party and hope to be part of that coalition after the 25th of March, so I concur. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Danielle.
Hi, everyone. Would you, if elected, work towards taking ownership of the CMP and escalate action for Lake Cathie?
Well, I'm not sure what you meant by the term ownership of the CMP. As far as I'm concerned, the Coastal Management Plan, for those who don't know what the acronym means, is really something that should be driven from the community. Obviously, it has to go out to consultation. Absolutely want to see that plan and that process expedited, and I encourage you as a councillor and other councillors interim to ensure that that happens. Now, the New South Wales government obviously have supported the process with significant amounts of funding to make sure that council can get through the Coastal Management Plan, so then we can get on with some of the actions in it. Now, I sincerely hope, and I think the community hopes that one of the actions will be the widening of Kenwood Drive Bridge, because we know that the work has been done. People understand that if you widen that Kenwood Drive Bridge, there will be a significant positive outcome for the health of the lake. So I absolutely want to see that Coastal Management Plan finished ASAP, and I encourage you again as a councillor to ensure that happens.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. We would certainly support the adoption and the work on the Coastal Management Plan, and thank you, Danielle, for the question, and thank you for all the work that Revive Lake Cathie have done. I really did do some study to try and educate myself on where Lake Cathie is at the moment, and I am really sure that the Coastal Management Plan should reflect the good science and the good work that's been put in by the state government, by the council, and by many other bodies. I particularly read reports from Professor Scott Johnston, who would advocate that permanently opening the lake would be an environmental disaster. Okay, I follow the science. Okay, so I was trying to educate myself. Okay, that's my answer. I support the science and I support the coastal management plan, and I recognise that everyone wants the best result for the community. We all want the same result. Opening the, according to Professor Scott Johnston, opening the lake. Do you want me to read the response? Okay. You would really want to be dead bloody certain that's the best way forward, because this could be an environmental disaster. It's an intermittent. Thanks anyway. I will follow the science.
Thank you, folks. Let's have a discussion. Come up here and talk to any of us afterwards.
Look, can we refrain from calling out or interjecting? The candidates are here to answer questions, not to have an argument with you.
I've mentioned that one of the things I think is important for any state member is to work in full collaboration with all levels of government. Concerning local issues like Lake Cathie and the breakwall, these are crucial. There's a lot of feelings about it, different opinions. My approach is that we talk fully, openly, in full transparency with all parties involved, follow the science, have a look at the reports. When it comes to the whole issue of Cathie, there's different opinions. Some say this, some say that. We have the coastal management plan. Let's sit down with that. Let's sit down with the engineers. Let's sit down with what the budget and what we can do and work out the best possible outcome according to the science.
I intimately know about the coastal management plan because we have to work with it, whether we like it or not, in council. It is they are gates for all of our coastal region and all coastal councils in New South Wales, that we have to work to the legislation of it. What we have to do is spend enormous amounts of public funds to do reports over and over again on issues about lakes like Lake Cathie. So at the end of the day, to say that Professor Johnson said it's going to be a bloody environmental disaster if we have a permanently open lake. Well, let me tell you, it was a bloody environmental disaster. When that lake was closed, marine life was flapping on the sand, dying. We had Ross River fever running rampant because we had an explosion in stagnant water within that lake. And people were worried about mosquito-borne viruses. This community has made it loud and clear. They want to see a lake open. We have had the best Christmas, the best time in this region with that lake open. Businesses have boomed and people have enjoyed an open, living, healthy lake.
Question 4 from Sue.
Thank you all for being here tonight and answering our difficult questions. Once again, I'm going to ask about the lake so you can have something else to say. So for this community of Lake Cathie and the health of the lake, what is it that you've actually done in, say, the last 18 months to 2 years, and why have you done this? To keep the lake with good health, for the community to be able to use it as an asset, and to make sure that we have children that can play in and around the lake, fishermen that can fish in the lake, and that everything's going to be pristine.
Thank you. It's really difficult to answer that question. I've tried to educate myself on the lake. I've been to many, many council meetings where they've talked about the lake. I've looked at the Revive Lake Cathie website. I've run the Revive Lake Cathie group. I've read all the correspondence. I've looked at reports. I've looked at scientific reports. And my my educated opinion from someone that doesn't live in the lake. I've fished in the lake. I've brought my kids to the lake for years. I know we all want the same result. My opinion is look at the science, work on the coastal management plan so we get the best result from everyone. It is an ICOL, an intermittently closed and open lake. To open it permanently would be incredibly expensive, and it would, here is one of the replies, it would, if anyone takes the time to read and understand and consider the matters, to open the lake will kill it once and for all due to significant changes in the dynamics of the lake. It's an intermittently closed and open lake. The sea level differences, to open it would be too expensive. It would be an environmental disaster. Thank you.
Specifically to answer your question, this is one of the challenges and issues that are put on your plate when you are wanting to stand for public office. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't have the opportunity to look at everything in depth as much as we can. Again, all I can say to you is what I said before. Should I be elected, this would be a priority and a responsibility that I would take very seriously, sit down and talk with all the parties involved. We've used the term follow the science. I think that is sound. In this case, it's environmental, marine engineers' reports. All of this has to be laid out on the table and look at the right way to move forward with this.
Thank you. What have I done? I've fought for this lake every day of the nearly 6 years of my time as mayor. I've tried to understand what's going on here. I have represented this community. I have spoken about it on Talkback Radio. I have spoken to the member for Port Macquarie about this lake. I have visited ministers in Parliament House, chaperoned by the member for Port Macquarie. I have spoken with Angus Gordon, who is a world-renowned coastal engineer, one of the best this country has. I've spoken to him about the Port Macquarie Breakwall and about the Lake Cathie opening, and also the coastal erosion along Illaroo Road. He, incidentally, just so you know his criteria, he won an OAM for the work that he actually did for the state government in helping them to write their own coastal management plan. So at the end of the day, what have I done? I've lived and breathed this lake. I've taken criticism from others who think that, you know, I'm out there for my own personal gain. A healthy lake is an open lake, and I hear every day that's what this community wants, and I support you in that.
Thank you very much. Look, I think this is an interesting question. Obviously, it's about a permanent opening of Lake Cathie. But, you know, in many ways, I think that to suggest to the community that you are going to get a permanent opening of Lake Cathie is misleading and, quite frankly, irresponsible. The other thing I will say is that this community, I mentioned before in my introduction, it's done a master plan in 2000, an incredible community consultation, and council actually worked with our community to develop this Lake Cathie community plan. I'm sure most people in the room would have seen it before. In fact, I'm going to suggest that a lot of people actually participated in the consultation. And I commend council for doing community plans for our communities up and down this coast and inland. This community plan from Lake Cathie has 5 objectives and 38 actions. Not one of them talks about a permanent opening of Lake Cathie. Nowhere in this plan does the community talk about a permanent opening of Lake Cathie. We have never been surveyed because I think the community understands broadly this is a very complex lake system, and we only have to look at what happened when Lake Innes was opened.
Question 5 is from Mel. I'll pass it to you.
Mel Gray-Thompson. Would you commit, if elected, to seek state government funding for the proposed $70 million aquatic centre in Port Macquarie, before the price escalates, knowing that Port Macquarie Council has had a freeze on a rate rise this year and is unlikely to be able to afford it on its own account?
Well, thank you very much for the question, Mel. And, I think we all know about the ongoing issue for over a decade now of the leaking swimming pool in Port Macquarie that hasn't been addressed. But I do commend the council. Finally, we have a plan for an aquatic centre at the price of about $70 million. The council has written to me in relation to that matter, and I intend, if elected on the 25th of March, to continue to work with council, not only on infrastructure projects like the aquatic centre, but I actually think there's a whole range of really significant projects, and if we just have a look at Lake Cathie, that haven't been addressed, that need to be addressed. One of them is the coastal erosion just down the road here, which requires a revetment wall. Again, has been absolutely supported by this community, is actually one of the actions in the community plan, but not addressed by council. So I always go in and advocate for funding and work with local government wherever I can, but I think we have to have some priorities, and I think some of the priorities at the moment are probably local roads.
Well, with $1.5 billion from the coalition government for local roads, we can park that one and get on with fixing our roads. In relation to the question that you've asked, there's a DA being prepared for the Aquatic Centre of Port Macquarie, and I'm very proud to be the mayor helping to drive that one through to bring it to fruition. In order to have funding, we actually need that DA to happen. Answer to your question, I have dated and time-stamped correspondence to show that that is an absolute priority of mine, to seek the funding through the state government, because we live in a growing region that requires facilities in our sports arenas and in aquatic centres, and the Nationals government have made it clear in their own literature that aquatic centres are definitely on their list, and I look forward to working with council because I know that we have a plan of borrowing some of that money and partnering with the state government. So it's a resounding yes to that question. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. If you get the job, you can write yourself a letter.
And I will.
The aquatic centre, I've had a lot of lobbying to me, and it's a really important thing for the people of Port Macquarie. It's important the old pool's leaking, the old pool's out of date. 70 million is a big call. We would be looking to the state government. So with any influence we have, Port Macquarie is the size that it should have a modern aquatic centre that supports the population. I don't want this to be at the expense of the Warhope, the Kendall or the Laurelton pools, which are all good facilities but could all do with some improvement. So yes, we would definitely support $70 million being obtained for a good, proper sporting aquatic centre, and I think the council is on board with that as well. So good news story. Thank you.
Any new incoming government inherits the books. You have to have a look at them, see what the budget, the condition of the budget, etc. Personally, I favour it, and I think it would be absolutely a terrific asset for the town and for the region, and so I'm all for it.
Nadine. Here's question 6. I'll bring it to you.
Hello, I'm Nadine Rose. My question is, the word progress is often used. Can you please give us your version of progress for this electorate?
Leslie.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. My view is that progress is not really an electorate-wide. I think it needs to be looked at community by community. And I think, and I'll go back to the Lake Cathie community plan, I think for this community, progress looks very different than it does, say, for another community, Hannam Vale, Harrington, or even Port Macquarie. As I said, the Lake Cathie Community Plan reflects the views of this community, and that is their number one is that they want to maintain the village atmosphere. So what does that look like? And how do you balance that with also obviously providing additional housing, because there is a demand for housing, we all know that. And how do you make sure that the wishes of the community broadly are also maintained? So for this community, and again, I encourage people to look at the Lake Cathie Community Plan, they often talk about having retaining that village atmosphere. What they really want is better cycleways and walkways, which I absolutely support. And the more that we can do to support better access to pedestrians, particularly, I think is really critically important.
I think this is a crucial question. Progress, growth, development. It's easy for us to think, oh, it's just going to be more estates, but it's broader than that. It's to do with preserving our quality of life in all areas, making sure that if there is growth of estates, we have the right infrastructure, we have the right support in there for quality of life for the young families, the new generation that will come through, that we're not creating places that are cultural wastelands. Progress is about quality of life that we can enjoy now and that we can continue to enjoy. And it's something that we must manage very carefully. It has to be sustainable, not with an eye for a quick deal or a quick profit, but with an eye to see what our quality of life will be in the future and for the next 1 or 2 generations. And invest in opportunities and change that come with business and with changes within society.
Thanks, Keith. I'll just follow on from what Keith said and actually agree with the things he was saying. Progress. Progress has to be sustainable. Sustainable development, in the one phrase, can often be an oxymoron. So the Greens think very closely about sustainable development. We've developed our framework principles to save our coast. Why do people move here? Because it's a wonderful environment. We don't want to spoil it with rampant overdevelopment. Okay, I'll just put these headings to you and judge the response from you guys here. Protect our coastal environments, number one, we all agree on that. Consider climate change. It's essential in the future going forward. The revetment wall, sea level rise, bushfire and biodiversity. Ensure infrastructure and services are in place. We've seen this in Port Macquarie. The roads can't cope with the traffic and we haven't had the infrastructure in place for the 6% expansion per annum we're getting. Make ecological assessments independent and transparent. Rein in short-term holiday lets so we can free up some of the housing, put the power back in the hands of the local community, end zombie development approval so we don't see developments wrecking our coast that were approved decades ago. Thank you.
So progress is change, and that's really upsetting a lot of people. And progress is pain. Progress means we need upgraded infrastructure because progress means that more people are moving here. Progress is development. Whether we like it or not, this region is changing, it's developing. And it's painful for us to see those trees being knocked down on private property. We want to stop that from happening, but we can't because progress is legislated as well. Progress also requires investment. Investment from the state government, of which we are not seeing nearly enough into the region of the Port Macquarie Hastings because we have been discovered and everybody from COVID decided this was the place they wanted to live. We all moved here, unless you've been lucky enough to be born and live here your life, we have come from somewhere and people are continuing to come from somewhere. So progress requires investment and progress, unfortunately, is inevitable and progress is something we're going to have to accept. Sorry, but that's the reality of progress.
Cathie, question 7.
Thank you. I'm representing Bonny Hills Progress Association as I ask this question. We recognise that safety has improved as a result of the recent work at the Houston Mitchell Drive and Pacific Highway intersection. But as you know, an independent study has shown that with increased population and increased highway traffic, there will be a need for an overpass by 2026. That date is only 3 years away, and unbelievably, the first step in planning has not even commenced. Planning takes years before construction even starts. As you also know, state government is where the initial planning and commitment must take place. And Dr. Gillespie has advised that the 80% commitment of federal funding cannot be triggered until the state government initiates the planning. We appreciate there are other intersections needing attention along the highway, but our question is focused on the safety of this community. How, as our local member, will you support our community in its quest for safety and advocate for the commencement of planning and ultimately construction of an overpass at Houston Mitchell Drive and the Pacific Highway?
Thank you, Kathy. And I just happened to bring one of my flyers along today that's ending up in everybody's letterboxes. Fighting for Houston Mitchell Overpass. Fighting for it. And you know, we have been having a long discussion from a council perspective. Not my lane, I was told. Stay in my lane. Well, my lane intersects with that highway and my community travels that lane to get across that highway. We've seen serious accidents, injury and fatality on that intersection. It's in writing. You can hold me to account if I'm elected. We need to work with the federal government, but first, as a state government, we need to invest the money to those plans so we can move into from concept, which Harrington for 2 years has been waiting to move from concept for their overpass, from concept designs into detailed designs. How many people have to risk their lives and their loved ones crossing dangerous highways without interchanges? And there's a lot of interchanges with lower resident communities, lower numbers of residents living in communities that already have those overpasses. So you know what? I'll fight for that Houston Mitchell Drive overpass.
Thank you very much. And can I acknowledge the work of the Bonny Hills Road Association and their ongoing advocacy, particularly on this issue. And no one, I don't think, here is going to argue that we don't need an overpass at Houston Mitchell Drive. But the reason that we got the over $2 million in improvements was because of your advocacy and me making representations as well on your behalf, and in fact on behalf of all of those motorists that use that intersection. Could we do it faster? We would love to be able to do it faster, but as has been acknowledged by the previous speaker, Peter, there is a process. And I'm not sure about, but maybe I'll have to check with the Minister after. I'm not sure that the commitment of the 80% from the federal government requires planning to have already commenced, because you know, it's just a split in funding. It's not a split for the construction of the project, as far as I'm aware, but I'm happy to take that on notice. But as you will also acknowledge, I organised you to get an audience with the Minister for Regional Roads, and as the Nationals candidate down there, I encourage her to keep getting the Nationals Regional Minister for Roads to make a commitment.
Again, this is one of those local issues that a new incoming member of state government would have to look into. I can tell you that Labor has very generous policies in terms of developing and improving regional roads. And this is another one where I would be sitting down with all involved and doing what we can to make sure that this moves forward the right way.
Thanks. This goes back to our framework of principles to save our coast. Real number 3 that I said was government must place requirements for adequate infrastructure and services. The big word is before new housing developments can be built. Before. How many new developments are on the Bonnie Hills Road? We've got nearly 600 retirement village houses going up. That's 600 vehicles that are going to use that road. Do we have adequate developer contributions towards infrastructure? I don't think so. This is part of our framework to save our coast. It's an incredible document. I urge you all to have a look at it. Thank you.